All right, let's get right into it. What we're about to walk through together isn't a sci-fi story or some wild guess. It's a pretty stark mathematical projection of our planet's future, a 150-year journey based entirely on statistical modeling.
And this quote really gets to the heart of it. The source material is super clear on this point. We're not talking about a single big disaster movie event. Nope. Think of it more like a long, slow, grinding process of change. A mathematical war of attrition where humanity is just forced to adapt to a planet that's become, well, fundamentally hostile.
And here it is. This is the number that drives everything else we're about to see. By the year 2075, the model projects a global temperature increase of about 2.5 degrees Celsius. That one number is the anchor for this entire forecast. So let's start with the first phase of this projection, which they're calling the decades of disruption. This is where the world we know, the systems we kind of take for granted, they all start to systematically break down. This is the beginning of the end of normalcy. What's really striking here is just how fast everything happens. It's a cascade, one thing knocking over the next. In 2026, boom, the insurance industry basically gives up on Florida and California. The risk from fires and hurricanes just becomes uninsurable. Then, just 3 years later, the Siberian permafrost is literally on fire, releasing these massive methane bombs that just pour fuel on the fire, accelerating the warming even more. By 2032, we see something called a blue ocean event, the first summer where the Arctic has no sea ice at all. And by 2035, the global financial system finally gets the memo. Banks just stop giving 30-year mortgages for coastal properties, and just like that, the entire market collapses. And this is a terrifying tipping point. In 2038, the Amazon rainforest, the lungs of our planet, it flips. There's a term for it, savanization. The forest gets so stressed from droughts and fires that it actually starts emitting more carbon than it absorbs. It starts actively accelerating the very problem it once helped to solve. This is where you see the human cost big time. With the Colorado River basically running on fumes and the Sun Belt becoming just unbearably hot, millions of Americans start a mass migration. They head north, towards the Great Lakes, towards Canada, all in search of two simple things: water and cooler weather. Okay, this is a milestone you never, ever want to reach. For the very first time, an entire region hits what's called the lethal wet bulb limit. It's a point where the air gets so hot and so humid that your body's natural cooling system, sweating, it just stops working. The outside air becomes literally unsurvivable. Without some kind of technology to protect you, you're dead in a few hours. So all of that brings us to the next era in this projection, building the fortress world. At this point, humanity isn't really trying to stop climate change anymore. It's in a desperate all-out race to engineer a new world, just to stay alive. So it's really crucial we understand this wet bulb idea, because it dictates so much of what happens next. It's not just about how hot it is. It's when the air is so full of water that your sweat can't evaporate. Your body's natural air conditioning just shuts down. As you see here, at about 35 degrees Celsius with 100% humidity, your body just cannot cool itself. This becomes the new brutal law of geography, deciding where human life is even possible. And in this kind of desperation, nations start doing some really extreme things. You can see the dangerous logic playing out here. Step 1, a country's on the brink of collapse from endless heat waves. Step 2, they decide to act alone, shooting particles into the stratosphere to dim the sun over their territory. But then, step 3, that messes up the rainfall patterns for their neighbors, which leads to step 4, a massive global crisis over who gets to control the planet's thermostat. And this is the result, a planet literally divided in two. Humanity splits into two completely different kinds of places. On one side, you have the fortresses. These are cooled, high-tech, managed zones. Think places like Canada or Scandinavia, where life is artificially kept comfortable for those who can afford it. And then, you have the sacrifice zones. These are huge parts of the world that are just abandoned to the heat, becoming empty, dangerous wastelands. So by the time we hit 2075, a strange new normal has set in. The global population is actually falling. Our coastlines are hidden behind these massive 10-meter-high seawalls. The whole idea of wild nature, it's mostly gone. What's left is either carefully managed in preserves or it just exists as data in a gene bank. The basics, food, water, air, are all calculated and optimized by AI. And yeah, we finally hit carbon neutrality, not because we became enlightened, but out of sheer desperate necessity. All right, now the projection enters its most radical phase. We're calling it humanity's synthetic future. Survival has been achieved, sure, but it came at a cost. And that cost forced humanity to basically redefine itself as a completely engineered species. The next century is just this whirlwind of unbelievable transformation. To stop heating the planet, we move all our heavy industry into space. Communication evolves beyond language. We're talking direct brain-to-computer interfaces as the norm. We start building this colossal structure around the sun to harvest its energy. And with that incredible power, we finally start to cool the planet back down. Eventually, we achieve what's known as a Type 1 civilization. That's a species that can harness all the energy on its home planet. But that raises a pretty huge question. What happens when the needs of this massive, global, high-tech civilization are bigger than what one little planet can provide? What do you do when an entire world's worth of energy just isn't enough anymore? Well, the answer, according to this forecast, is something straight out of science fiction, the Dyson swarm. And yeah, it is as wild as it sounds. Imagine millions of orbital mirrors, a huge swarm of them, all designed to capture a huge chunk of the sun's total energy output and then beam it back to Earth. This gives the civilization a power source that's, well, virtually limitless. With all this energy, humanity makes a really strange choice. To save resources in the physical world, almost half the population decides to take part in a virtual exodus. Their physical bodies are kept safe in these super energy-efficient stasis pods, but their minds, their consciousness, live full-time in perfect digital simulations. They're living full lives, just consuming 1,000 times less stuff. And this is where it all leads. After that 150-year journey, the dominant species on Earth is no longer us. Not Homo sapiens as we know ourselves. It's a new kind of being, a hybrid of reprogrammed DNA and a consciousness that can be uploaded and downloaded. So, when you take all of this in, this entire journey, it really leaves us with a completely new definition of what it even means to survive. And I think the source material sums it up perfectly right here. Humanity didn't end, but the free world, the world where we could just take nature for granted, where clean air, fresh water, and a stable climate were just givens, that world is gone. Forever. In this meticulously controlled, technologically incredible future, humanity has survived. You could even say it triumphed over a crisis of its own making. But the final question we're left with is this. The old world was free, in every sense of that word. So what exactly is the price of this new one?